Hello Divination and welcome. In today's video, I'm going to show you step by step how to design abstract lines to frame your content in Divi. So this is the final design we're aiming to achieve. So without wasting a lot of time, let's dive in and let's get started. Okay, so right now I'm in my WordPress admin dashboard. So we're going to start off by creating a brand new page. So I'm going to come over here to pages and then click on add new. I'm going to name my page abstract. Click on use the Divi builder, and then I'm going to go straight to the visual builder. Right, so what we're going to need here is a pre-made layout. So I'm going to come over here to the middle option, and the layout we need is for the cryptocurrency about page. So I'm just going to scroll down here until I find the cryptocurrency layout pack. Okay, and here it is. I'm going to click here, and the page we need is the about page. So I'm going to select the about and click on use this layout. Great, so our page is loaded now. So what I'm going to do next is I'm just going to go ahead and publish this page and just make sure that I save as I'm building the page. Right, so the next thing we need to do now is to add some borders on our sections. So I'm going to come over here to my first section and I'm going to click on this gear icon to enter my section settings. And then I'm going to search for width. Right, so what we need to do here is we are going to first change our width to 90%, and then we're going to choose some borders. So we just need one over here to the left and another one over here to the right. So let's adjust our border width. So over here, I'm just going to add 4 pixels. And then on the left one, I'm going to do the same, 4 pixels. Okay, so that's looking great. Right, so the next thing I'm going to do now is I'm going to add colors to the borders that I've just created. So I'm going to start off with the right border, and then I'm going to come over here to this eyedropper tool and paste my color, just like that. Now, if you want to use the same colors as I'm using in this tutorial, I will link to the post in the show notes below, and you can go ahead and use those colors. Okay, so the next color I'm going to add is the color for the left border. So I'm going to come over here and select the left border. Click on this eyedropper tool. Now this time we're going to use an RGBA value. So I'm going to drag the slider down and paste my value between these brackets, just like that. So now we can see my color has been added here and it's also been added here. Right, so that's all we need to do for now. So I'm going to go ahead and save. Now the next stage is I'm going to add the page background color. So because as you can see here, we have this white color on the side. So to do that, we need to add the color to this actual page. So I'm going to come over here to this gear icon, and this takes us to our page settings. So I'm going to click on background, and then I'm going to add my background color. So I'm going to click this eyedropper tool, drag my sliders all the way up so I can get my RGBA value, and then I'm going to paste it in here. So now what you notice is on the sides, this looks seamless. Okay, so with that done, I'm going to go ahead and save. Now it's time to add lines using background column gradients. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to come over here to this gear icon to select my row settings, click on background. So what we need here is column 1 background. So I'm going to come over here and click the second tab because we need to add the gradients. So I'm going to click this plus button and add my first color. So it's going to be an RGBA value. So I'm just going to drag this down and I'm just going to paste my value between the brackets, just like that. Move on to my second color. Again, it's going to be an RGBA value. I'm going to paste my value in here. Now we need to set our gradient direction to 90 degrees. And then we need to finally set our start and end position. So our start position here is going to be set to 99.5, and then the end position is going to be set to 0%. So now we see that we have the single line. Okay, so we're going to move on to column 2 background. Again, we're going to click this second tab to add our gradient. Click this plus button, and I'm going to come over here to my first color. As before, it's going to be a gradient. Is going to be an RGBA value. So I'm just going to paste my values between these brackets like that. And then next I need to add my second color. So I'm going to come over here, select my second color. And again, this is going to be an RGBA value. And then between the brackets, I'm going to add my color like that. So as we did before, we're going to adjust our start and end position. So our start position needs to be set at 99.5 like that, and our end needs to be set at 0%. Right, so finally, over here on the gradient direction, this needs to be set to 90. The next thing we need to do is to give the row a custom width. So I'm going to come over here to design, sizing, use custom width. And in this case, we're going to use percentages. So I'm going to come over here, switch this percentage, and I'm going to add 90%. Next, we're going to add some borders for this row. So I'm going to come over here to border, and then just as before, we're going to add the border to the left and the right side, and the left border is going to have a width of 2 pixels. Right, so let's go ahead and do that. So I'm going to start over here with the left, set my size to 2, and we're going to give this a color. So I'm going to click this eyedropper tool and add my color. Now this color is going to be an RGBA value, so I'm going to paste my values between these brackets like that. Right, so let's move on and do the right one. So I'm going to click here on the right tab. The size again is going to be 2 pixels, and this time this is going to be a hexadecimal value. So all I'm going to need to do is to click here on this gear icon on the eyedropper tool and then paste my color in here. Okay, so now we can see that our lines are now appearing. So this is the left one, which we just did, and that's the right one. Now let's move on to spacing. So I'm going to come over here, click on spacing. So what we need to adjust here is the custom padding. So let's start off with 10% for the top. And then next we need to go to our column 1 padding. So over here for the top, we're going to leave it as it is. But for the bottom, we are going to add 5%. And then for the left and right, we are going to add 3% to both those sides. So I'm going to add my 3% here to the left and 3% to the right. Now for the column 2 custom padding, we're going to do the same. So this time, I just want to show you a quick trick that you can use, and that is to activate this chain icon and just add your 10% here, and that applies it to both sides, the left and the right. And then over here for our column 2 padding, we need to get rid of that 10% if you have it on. Okay, so we're done with the row settings. Let's go ahead and save. And now the next thing is to add our lines to our modules. So I'm going to start with the image module. So I'm going to click here in the gear icon, click on design. So let's start off by adjusting our width. So I'm going to come over here to sizing, and we are going to change our width to about 62%. And then we're going to center this. And now it's time to add our borders. So let's come over here to border, and let's start off by adding our left one. So I'm going to click here on the left border, and the size needs to be 4 pixels. And then next I'm going to add my color, and this color is going to be an RGBA value. So I'm just going to drag the slider down, and then I am going to paste my values between the brackets. Now, if you want to use the same colors as I'm using in this tutorial, I will link to the post in the show notes below. Okay, so I've added my color, and we can see it right here. Okay, so let's save, and now it's time to move over to our text module. So I'm going to come over here, click on module settings, design. Right, so let's start off with our spacing. So I'm going to come over here and start adding my margins. So I'm going to start with margin left and set this to 5%. Next, I'm going to come over here to my custom padding. And for this, I am going to add the same value for the top and the bottom. So I'm just going to activate the chain and add my 3%. And then over here to the left, I'm going to add 5%. Next, I'm going to come over here to my border styles, and I'm going to add my left one, and my border width is going to be 4 pixels. So I'm just going to add my 4 pixels like that. Next, I want to add my color. So I'm going to click the eyedropper tool, paste my color in here. Right, so for now, I'm going to save because it's time now to do the next text module. So I'm going to click here on the gear icon to enter my text settings, click on design. And what we need to do here, again, as before, we need to add our margins. So I'm going to come over here to spacing. And for our margin top, I'm going to set this to 5%. And for the margin right, again, this is going to be set at 5%. And then over here for the custom padding, I'm going to activate these chain icons because I'm going to add 5% all around like that. Okay, so the next thing we need to do now is to add our right border. So I'm going to click here on the borders, select my right border, and I'm going to set my size to 2 pixels. And then finally, I'm going to add my color. So I'm going to click this eyedropper tool and paste my hexadecimal value, just like that. So you can see here, the line has been added. Right, so let's go ahead and save. And the next thing we're going to do is we're going to add borders, a background gradient, and box shadow to the button. So let's go ahead and do that. So I'm going to come over here to the button module and click on my module settings. Now, to make things easy for me, I'm going to come over here to filter, modified styles. So this takes me straight away to where all my options are. So what I want to start off with here is by adding my gradient. So I'm going to click here on the second tab and add my gradient. So I'm going to start off with my first color. So I'm going to click this plus button, add my first color, and this is going to be an RGBA value. So I'm going to paste it. Let me just come back over here and add my second color. I'm going to paste the value between the brackets just like that. Now with our colors selected, let's head over and add our gradient direction. So over here, it's set at 180. This needs to be 90 degrees. And then our start position needs to be at 1%. And our end position needs to be at 0. So now you can see that all we have is just a straight line. Right, so the next thing we need to do is to add our button border width. So right now it's set at 10%. At 10 pixels. Let's set it to 24. And we're also going to add our button border color. I'm going to paste my value in here. And then you can see right now our button is way too thin. Let's add some space in there. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to come over here to my padding and add 1 EM to both the top and the bottom. Now for our box shadow to frame the bottom right corner of the button, we need to head over here to box shadow and select our shadow. So I'm going to go with this one right here. And we need to add our box shadow horizontal position to 2 pixels, and vertical position needs to be 2 pixels as well. Now we need to add our shadow color. So I'm going to come over here, and this is going to be an RGBA value. So I'm just going to paste my value like that. And over here, our box shadow is set to inner shadow. So let's set this to outer. So now we can see that our lines are now on the outer, which is great. Right, so for now, let's go ahead and save before we add more lines. Right, so the next thing we're going to do is to add some dividers, because this also adds more design options for us. So I'm going to come over here, and above this image, we are going to add a divider. So I'm going to click this plus button and search for my divider module. Select it. Right, so over here, we're going to start off by adding our background. So I'm going to come over here and add my gradient. So I'm going to click this plus button, and this is where my first color is going to come. So I'm going to paste it, and then I'm going to add my second color. This one is going to be an RGBA. So I'm just going to drag that slider and paste my value between the brackets. So you can see here as I'm developing it is right here on the bottom. So we are going to drag it on the top once we're done. Okay, so let's go to our divider weight and divider height. So I'm going to come over here to design, sizing. So our divider weight needs to be set at 2. And our divider height needs to be also set at 2. And then our custom padding, let's add 80% here. And we want this to be aligned to the left. And we're not done yet. Let's go back over here to our background. For our gradient here, we need to set this to 90 degrees. And our start position needs to be set at 1 and end position at 0. So now let's go ahead and save. So now I'm just going to drag this to the top. So the one thing I need to do here is to set my end position to 80%, not 1%. So what you can also do with these colors is you can play around with these colors and choose a color that works for you. So as you can see here, as I move this, the color in there is actually changing. So for now, I'm going to leave that as it is. And next, what we can do now is, since we have this all set up, we can duplicate this and drag it to different parts of our website. So for example, you can drag it over here to the top, just like that. Maybe go in and change the colors. So you can see here, the color is changing. I'm going to save that. And maybe you want to add this to the bottom. So I'm just going to drag this over here to the bottom. Just like that. And again, as we did before, you can go in, change the size, and also change the colors. So over here on the sizing, so right now it's set at 80%. So I'm just going to make it just a bit smaller, just like that, to 35%. And then I'm going to go into the color and play around with the colors. So here you can see we can change the colors just like that. Okay, so for now, I'm just going to go ahead and save. But as you can see, this is how you can add all these lines to different parts of your design. So what we're going to do next is we are going to add some horizontal lines. So what we're going to do is we're going to start off by adding a new row. So I'm going to click this plus button and we're going to need 4 columns. So I'm going to select my 4 columns just like that. So let's go into the row settings and set up our size. So I'm going to come over here to design sizing, and over here on the custom width, we're going to set this to 95%. So first of all, change the unit to percentage and add 95. Now we're going to add the paddings. So we're going to come over here to spacing, and for the padding top and bottom, we're going to set this to 0. So I'm just going to activate my chain key and add a 0 to the top and bottom. So the next thing we need to do is to add our custom padding, but this time for our tablet. So to do that, I'm going to start off with column 1 padding. So over here, I'm going to click this little icon and then click the tablet. And all we need to do is to add 20% to the right. Column 2, we need to do the same, 20% to the right. Right, so let's come over here to column 3, and this is going to be 30%. And column 4 needs to be set at 20% right. Great, so we're going to switch back over here to our desktop view. Now we are ready to add our divider module. So I'm just going to save this, and then I'm going to click this plus button and search for my divider module. And here it is. So first of all, where it says show divider, I'm going to say no. Next, I'm going to come over here to my background and click on the second tab to add our gradient. So I'm going to click the plus button, and my first color here is going to be an RGBA value. I'm going to go in and paste my values between the brackets, just like that. And for my gradient color, my second color, I'm going to come over here, click the second color and paste my value like that. Right, so the next thing we need to do is to set our height at 100 pixels. So I'm going to go into the design tab, sizing, and then our height, we're going to set it to 100 and our width to 2. So you can see here, it has this nice, beautiful design. Right, so for the module alignment, let's align this to the right. Next, we need to go into spacing because we need to customize our margins. So for our margin top, this is going to be a minus 300 pixels. And for the bottom, this is going to be 300 pixels. Now, what we can do here is, as you can see, my line here is way into this graphic. So we can adjust this by playing around with our negative margin. So as you can see here, I've just added minus 200. So now it's going to be lower, and we can keep doing that until we are happy with the height. So right now, let me add minus 150. Okay, so I think I'm happy with minus 150. And over here, what you could also do is you can reverse this gradient and make it face the other way. So let me show you quickly how to do that. So instead of having the color over here to the right, you can just go in just like that and add it over here to the left side. And then over here is where you want to add your transparency. So now we can see that we've just reversed how it looks. So I think I'm going to go with this, to be honest. Now, to make things easier for us, let's just copy this and add it to our second column. So I'm going to save this, and then I'm just going to duplicate this and drag it to the second column. Okay, so now that we have it in the second column, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go into the module settings and make some customizations. So let's start off with the gradient. So I'm going to come over here to the gradient, and for my left color, I'm going to paste my value here like that. And for my right color, this is going to be an RGBA value. So I'm just going to paste it like that. So our end position this time needs to be set at 40%. And our height needs to be set at 300. So I'm going to come over here to design, sizing, and we're going to change our height to 300. So now we can see it's much longer. And for our alignment, I'm going to align this to the middle. So now that we have this, all we need to do now is to copy and paste this to the rest of the columns. Okay, so now I've pasted my modules. So what we can do now is we can go in and make adjustments to our colors. So let's say I need to make changes to the colors in here. So I'm just going to go into my settings, background, and then over here is where we can change our color. So I'm going to start off with this color right here, and I can just adjust my transparency and make that look slightly different. I'm going to save that. And let's say I need to add more of these lines. All I have to do is to duplicate this as many times as I want and just go in and make minor adjustments to the colors. And you notice what I've done here is I couldn't locate my modules. So what I did is I activated my grid mode here, and that allows me now to locate where all my modules are. So even the positioning can be adjusted by just going into the module settings and then clicking on design, spacing, and we can adjust here and perhaps maybe leave this at 50. So you can see here that the line is much lower. So you can play around with that, add more lines if you wish. And then I'm just going to disable this. So pretty much this is how you add your abstract lines. So there you have it. Thank you all for watching. If you like this video, please give me a thumbs up and do follow us on our social media platforms. By doing so, you'll be notified every time we release new tutorials. Until next time, thanks for watching and I'll see you in the next video.